Hi, good morning, students. This is Mr. Valenzuela, your instructor, coming to you over the internet in the power of technological industrialization. So today I'm going to be kind of discussing with you and sharing with you some information about the what we call the Industrial Revolution in the United States. And so as we go through these notes together, you have a handout alongside, and I hope that you fill in the blanks as we go through the handout. Please remember to pause if you have any questions, if you need to fill some stuff out, and of course if you have any questions for me, go ahead and pause and then just come over and ask. Okay? Alright, so you have your handout and you have your pencil and you have your headphones on, and let's find out how the United States came to be an industrial power. Alright, so first of all, we need to go over some vocabulary here about what the Industrial Revolution really means. So there's a few terms here you need to make sure you understand. What is industry? What does it mean to become industrialized? And what this term revolution means. In particular, a revolution is a scientific term that shows that there's like a complete turnover in ideas. You've heard of like the American Revolution or the French Revolution. But revolutions aren't necessarily only political. What we're going to be learning about here is a revolution that is an economic revolution. It really changes the way Americans lived, think, organized themselves, how they saw themselves, and, of course, their take-home pay and the economic activity of a nation is changing. So we're going to see widespread effects because of this industrialization here. Go ahead and pause it and make sure you fill in the blanks. Understand what industry, industrialization, and revolution means. So a lot of the Industrial Revolution that's happening in America happened before the Civil War, such as the first railroad was invented. And we saw steam power, the year the United States declared independence. But the Civil War really hastened the Industrial Revolution in America. The Union and the Confederacy both were investing a great deal of money into moving soldiers around and producing enough to clothe the soldiers and feed the soldiers. So that war kind of prompted a lot of investment in industry within the United States, building railroads, building new factories, kind of mechanizing what we did. Instead of doing things by hand, we used machines, aka mechanics, to change how we created things to make more. In addition, not only did we need more for the war, but we had less people to actually do the work by hand. Since so many men were engaged in war making, they couldn't also be engaged in handcrafting materials. So there was not only a need for more efficiency, but there was a demand for much more stuff at the same time too. So this age of industrialization kind of had a side effect on what was happening in the rest of people's lives. The term for this age after the Civil War, kind of after the Civil War up until like the turn of the century, aka 1900, is often referred to as the Gilded Age. Now, what gilding is kind of like a layer of metal over another layer of metal. For instance, sometimes people have costume jewelry that's kind of brass or cheap on the inside, and then it has maybe some type of shiny coating or silver or gold coating on the outside, just at the very top layer so it looks nice. In the United States, why this was called the Gilded Age is because, as an analogy to that kind of cheap jewelry, the United States looked like there was a great deal of economic growth. It looked rich. It looked powerful. But all you had to do was scratch the surface and you saw all kinds of things that maybe didn't fit with the idea of this glittering society or this city on a hill. You may have seen things like pollution and disease being spread in cities. You may have seen children and women taken advantage of and exploited by these factories. And of course, you saw a great deal of income inequality. The rich got richer and the poor also got richer. But there was such a disparity of wealth that even as their lives got better, the poor often felt like they were being left behind and kind of run over by the rich, especially because the amount of money the rich made kind of allowed them to dominate society and dominate politics. There was a lot more bribery scandals, and the corruption in government was fairly obvious, and in many cases people didn't even try to hide it. So America looked like there was a lot of good things going on, but behind it, it wasn't perfect. So there's a box on your worksheet. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take a look at what's happening here, the things that I'm listing. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to draw on the left-hand side kind of a hill with a beautiful mansion and skyscrapers, twinkly lights, new cars, and lots of money. So try to draw these things on the left-hand side. Make a little facade. So go ahead and pause it here and do your best. I know you're not artists, but do your best to kind of draw out these things. Okay, so pause it and draw these things as best as you can. Okay, now that you have those things drawn off, kind of on the right-hand side, behind the mansion and the skyscrapers and the cars and the money and the lights, I want you to draw these things. Crowded people, crime, death and disease, and of course human excrement. Pollution that comes from often not having good sanitation, and fires. And of course, exploiting of children. So go ahead and pause it here and try to depict, 3 or more of these things on the right-hand side as well. This is what we mean by the Gilded Age. It's kind of what people see and what's behind what people see are two different things. So let's take a look at how America experienced the industrial success it did. Much of the American industrial success came from the fact that, well, first of all, we have oceans on both sides of the United States. These oceans kind of protect us from war and invasion. This didn't protect the Native Americans from invasion, of course, but they had very low resistance to European diseases, which hurt them tremendously. There are a lot of waterways in America. I know that this map doesn't show it here. Let me go ahead and show you in just a second. So this map is actually a depiction of all the U.S. river systems. You can see here that most of America has access or is very close to rivers. If you remember your ancient civilization, you know that rivers are where civilizations grew up, because not only did it provide fresh water for civilizations, but it also provided the opportunity to trade ideas as well as goods up and down the rivers. A lot easier to navigate than going through woods or over hills and mountains. In addition, rivers also had a good source of food because there were fish there as well. So now if you look at the natural riverways of America, a lot of these are connected. And once a steam engine is invented, you're not just limited to going downstream, but you could turn on an engine in like a steamboat and turn around and go upstream as well. So imagine this river network, like this is an internet of rivers where everyone all over this country is kind of connected by this network of trade and ideas. And you get a better sense of how important rivers were to the industrial development of the United States. Of course, the United States also had a great deal of material that helped them industrialize. We had a great deal of coal that we could burn to run engines. We had a great deal of iron to make durable goods such as railroad tracks. And we also had, the First Amendment, which allowed freedom of speech. And we also had private property protections in the Constitution. So Americans didn't just have the things it needed to industrialize, but it kind of had the legal and economic system that allowed people to make money off new ideas. Like if you invented something, you could get rich from it. So there was a great deal of invention and innovation. Finally, America had, unlike some other countries, public schools, which kind of meant that even poor people could learn how to read and write, invent, and even change their life. The first thing that connected America after, of course, the river networks were railroads. Railroads were the second cheapest way of moving things around the country. And unlike rivers, railroads could fairly affordably be built all across the country, even over rivers. Railroads allowed us to connect cities to the countryside. It allowed us to connect cities to each other. And so railroads were kind of a man-made river system. Both of them, it's important that you understand, are like networks. Now, these rivers also connected to the ocean. So between the railroads, the rivers, and the oceans, the United States was fairly easily and cheaply able to connect with basically every other country on the face of the planet. Here is a photo of some men engaged in logging activities. America had some incredible forests, and here they are chopping it down to either burn to help power some of those industries or to build houses with. So the immense wooded forests of North America as well helped contribute to industrialization too. Here is just for reference some of the large redwoods that were chopped down. You can see a person standing here and the full diameter of the tree there. Here's some other people reclining under a partly chopped tree. And here is that map of railroad networks in the United States. So you can see that in the green where railroads existed kind of at the end of the decade during the Civil War. And you can see this wide spread of red are the new railroads added in the 20 years after the Civil War was over. So you can see that during the Civil War, before the Civil War, most of those railroads connected major cities on kind of the east coast of the United States. Whereas after the Civil War, there's quite a bit of, attention paid towards the Midwest and the West and connecting sea to shining sea via these railroad networks. Now, you may also notice these kind of gray lines here that divide the time zones. Fun anecdote is the time zones only exist because the railroad companies needed to be able to let people know when trains would be going and arriving. And so time zones were created to make sure that people knew how to do that. Here are some people working on the railroad. This is a historical depiction. This one is a little more accurate. Here is not a depiction, but this is a photo taken of Western Railroad construction. I'm not sure if you can notice kind of the clothes, the hat, or the face here, but this man looks to be of Asian descent, most probably Chinese. There was a lot of Chinese immigration into the West in the late 19th century, and back then people had mixed feelings about immigration. There was a lot of racism regarding Asians, especially Chinese, and so there are very few jobs they were allowed to have. Working on dangerous railroad construction was one of the jobs they could have. And you can see here some more Western Railroad constructions. You can see these, what are oftentimes called coolie hats, protecting them from the sun, but you can see more Chinese immigrant workers clearing land and tearing down hills to build railroads. So all the work in the United States done in factories and in railroads required a great deal of workers to get it done. And so there were so many jobs opened up in America that it attracted a lot of immigrants from Europe and from China. Okay, so check to see what you understand. Can you explain why Mark Twain called this time period the Gilded Age? Go ahead and pause it here. Refer back to your notes. Make sure you can understand that. Another question. How do the railroads impact the steel industry? Go ahead and pause it here and see if you can answer that. How did the growth of U.S. manufacturing affect the country's international relations during the late 19th century? And how were railroads essential in the Industrial Revolution? Go ahead and pause it here. Check to see if you know. All right. In the early 1900s, Americans saw a rise in urbanization, mostly due to increased immigration from where? And China. That's not on here. A lot of the things that happened in the Industrial Revolution was because of the new inventions and innovations. An invention is a new product, and innovation is using a new product in a different way. And a lot of these inventions led to the founding of new businesses, such as General Electric. General Electric was kind of started by Thomas Edison. It was his company. He got credit for inventing the phonograph, the light bulb, and the kinetoscope. If you don't know what a kinetoscope is, it's a movie projector. It's basically a way of capturing film on camera over time. So he basically was the father of the movie industry. Now, Thomas Edison did not work alone to get his over 1,000 patents for inventions. He had a whole laboratory of people, kind of an army of researchers. And Thomas Edison also was kind of known to be kind of heavy-handed in competing with others. So Edison and his laboratory were kind of notorious for, taking advantage of their power and size to make sure they got credit for inventing things. Here's another father of one of our modern corporations. AT&T was founded by Alexander Graham Bell. Now, once again, a lot of countries think that they invented the telephone, and there was a lot of science on telephone happening simultaneously around the world. But Alexander Graham Bell gets credit in America for inventing the telephone. He filled out the patent application, and you can see on the bottom kind of the evolution of the phone as it gets smaller and more able to do things. This guy was a famous inventor too. If you don't recognize him, his name is Nikola Tesla. Oops. Tesla did a lot of inventing and science too, but one of the reasons that he's separate than Edison is that he didn't get credit for his work is because he didn't fill out the patent forms, or he did and they were mysteriously lost or not filed properly. So let's take a look at some of the wonders of modern day industrialization. Here's a new invention. It is a pillow hat, so that you can walk around and lay down and always have a pillow with you, because that's what you needed, right? How about this awesome thing? It is a USB drive that looks like food. How about a texting mitt? When it's cold outside or when it's raining and you still want to text? Make it way easier to just mug you, right? Speaking of mugs, how about this mug? You pour in the milk, you pour in the chocolate, and it stirs it for you, saving you countless seconds of your life by stirring chocolate milk for you. How about this awesome thing? I don't know how many years I am away from needing one of these, but you're bald? Now you're not. Can you even tell that this is the same guy? How about one of these? It's a pillow of someone's lap. It's a lap pillow. How about this other invention? Not creepy at all to have, someone's detached, disembodied arm to snuggle up with. How about automatic bang cutters, helping you keep your bangs straight? I assume that it doesn't, blow the cut hair off your face. Every once in a while, we also invent something useful, like this filter straw. I don't know if you know how many people don't have access to clean water all over the planet, but it is an enormous amount of people and quite deadly. So you just replace the device inside when it's done being filtered, but you can drink water. I think that's Bear Grylls up there giving it a demo. All right, so here's some of the things that contributed to the American Industrial Revolution. You have our system of free enterprise, very little government control of industry. We're going to see some of the consequences of that soon. New inventions and improvements, and of course, getting people to come out of the countryside, which we call rural America, and getting people from across the world to come to America to work as cheap labor. Now, the shift of rural to urban didn't happen overnight, but industrialization helped hasten it. So when we use the term rural, it means like countryside, predominantly farm or agricultural dominated. When we say urban, we mean cities. So we are continuing to see that trend in America today as people leave, places like Nebraska and Kansas and move to big cities where a lot of the economic growth is happening. Okay, so who invented the light bulb? Nikola Tesla. J.K. Edison gets the credit for it. He filed the patent paperwork. Who invented the telephone? Once again, an American gets credit for it, Alexander Graham Bell. Do you understand why the Industrial Revolution happened in America? Here are those factors. Make sure you understand, if not commit these to memory, make sure you understand kind of what these concepts are. And finally, do you understand how population shifted? Pause it here and fill in the blanks. Rural to urban. All right, thanks for listening. I'm going to check for understanding when you're done. Feel free to highlight, write, do whatever you need, and I'll be talking to you soon in real life. Thanks. Bye.